I paid off my mortgage in 2007. Took every dollar I had in savings, $230,000, and made the final payment on my house. Thought I was being smart, responsible, living the American dream, debt-free at 63 years old. Then 2008 hit, and I learned the hard way that being mortgage-free doesn't mean anything when you have no cash and the world is falling apart. Hey everyone, my name is Arthur. I'm 74 years old, and I want to tell you about one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. Not because someone scammed me, not because of bad luck, but because I thought I was being smart and responsible when I was actually being incredibly stupid. I paid off my mortgage early, and it almost destroyed my family. Let me take you back to 2007. I was 63 years old, still working as a manufacturing supervisor. My wife Barbara and I had bought our house in 1992 for $180,000. By 2007, we'd been paying on it for 15 years, had about $170,000 left on the mortgage. Payment was around $1,100 a month, and I hated it. Hated having that debt. Hated making that payment every month. My father had drilled it into me. Debt is bad. Debt is slavery. A man should own his home free and clear. So I'd been aggressively saving to pay it off. Every bonus, every raise, tax refunds, everything went into savings with one goal: pay off the house. By spring of 2007, we had about $230,000 in savings, enough to pay off the mortgage with some left over. And I decided this was it. This was the time. We were going to be debt-free. Barbara was hesitant. She said, "Arthur, that's all our savings. What if something happens? What if we need cash?" And I said, "What's going to happen? We're both working, we're healthy, and once the house is paid off, we'll save the $1,100 a month payment. We'll build the savings back up fast." She wasn't convinced, but I wore her down. Talked about being debt-free, about the freedom of owning our home outright, about how Dave Ramsey says debt is the enemy and you should pay everything off as fast as possible. So in June 2007, I made the payoff, wrote a check for $170,000, paid off the mortgage, got the title free and clear. We had about $60,000 left in savings. I thought that was plenty. Emergency fund, we'd be fine. I felt amazing. Thought I'd accomplished something huge. Kept telling people, we're mortgage free. We own our home outright. Like it was this badge of honor. For a few months, everything seemed great. We were saving that $1,100 a month payment, building the savings back up. I felt like a genius. Then 2008 happened. The economy started collapsing. The company I worked for started struggling. By September, they announced layoffs, and I got cut. After 22 years with the company, I was out. I was 64. Severance was 2 months, then nothing. I wasn't worried at first. I'd find another job. I had experience, skills. Someone would hire me, except nobody would. I sent out hundreds of resumes, went on dozens of interviews, and I kept hearing the same thing: you're overqualified, which is code for you're too old and expensive. The severance ran out, still no job, and we had $60,000 in savings. That's it. All our liquidity, all our cash. Barbara was still working, making about $40,000 a year, but that barely covered our basic expenses: utilities, food, insurance, car payments. We had been relying on my income, about $70,000 a year, for everything else, and now that was gone. I tried to get Social Security early at 64, but the payments were reduced. Only got about $1,400 a month. That helped, but it wasn't enough. By early 2009, we were burning through the savings. $2,000 a month, $3,000 some months, and I still couldn't find a job. The economy was in full collapse. Nobody was hiring, especially not 64-year-old former supervisors. Barbara started picking up overtime, extra shifts, anything to bring in more money. She was exhausted. I could see it wearing on her. But what choice did we have? The savings kept dropping. $50,000, $40,000, $30,000, and I started to panic because I realized what I'd done. I'd locked up all our money in the house we couldn't eat, the house that didn't generate income, the house that still needed property taxes and insurance and maintenance. I put everything into being debt-free, and now we had no flexibility, no liquidity, no options. Then my daughter Sarah called. She lived 2 states away with her husband Mike and their 2 kids, and Mike had lost his job too. They were struggling, behind on rent, about to be evicted. She asked if they could stay with us, just temporarily, until they got back on their feet, maybe 3 months. What was I supposed to say? They were going to be homeless. My grandkids were going to be on the street. Of course I said yes. They moved in, 4 extra people in our 3-bedroom house. The kids took 1 bedroom, Sarah and Mike took another, Barbara and I kept ours. And our expenses doubled. We weren't just feeding 2 people anymore, we were feeding 6. The utility bills shot up. Water, electricity, gas, everything. The savings dropped faster. $20,000, $15,000, $10,000. Mike couldn't find work either. Sarah got a part-time job at Target, making minimum wage. It barely covered gas money. They planned to stay 3 months. They stayed 2 years because the economy didn't recover. Jobs didn't come back. And they had nowhere else to go. During those 2 years, I watched our savings drain to almost nothing. Watched Barbara work herself into exhaustion. Watched my daughter and son-in-law's marriage strain under the stress. Watched my grandkids grow up in a house full of tension and fear. And I thought about that mortgage payoff, about the $170,000 I'd put into the house, money that was now locked up, illiquid, useless. If I'd kept that money in savings and kept making the $1,100 mortgage payment, we would have been fine. We would have had $200,000 plus in cash, could have weathered the job loss, helped Sarah properly instead of just cramming them into our house, had options. But I didn't have options because all my money was in the house. I tried to get a home equity line of credit. Went to the bank in 2009. The house was worth maybe $300,000 at that point, down from $360,000 before the crash. No mortgage. Should have been easy to get a HELOC. They said no because I didn't have income, because my credit had started slipping from maxing out credit cards to cover expenses, because the bank was scared and not lending to anyone. I tried to sell the house, thought maybe we'd downsize, cash out some equity, get liquidity. Couldn't sell it. Market was dead. Houses in our neighborhood were sitting for a year or more, and if we had sold it, where would we go? We had 6 people to house. Couldn't afford to rent a place big enough. We were trapped in a paid-off house with no cash, no income, no options. I finally found a job in late 2010. Warehouse work, grunt work, $22 an hour, way less than I'd made before. But it was something, better than nothing. Barbara finally told me she needed to cut back her hours. The stress and overtime had given her high blood pressure. She was 61 and looked 70. I'd aged her 10 years in 2. Sarah and Mike finally moved out in mid-2010. Mike had found a job in another state. They packed up and left, and our house felt empty, quiet, broken. Barbara and I sat at the kitchen table one night after they left, and she said, "We almost lost everything. If I hadn't been able to keep working, we would have lost the house anyway, would have had to sell it for pennies just to survive." She was right. The only thing that saved us was her income, not the paid-off house, her job, her overtime, her sacrifice. And I'd put her in that position. Because I'd been so obsessed with being debt-free that I'd left us with no margin, no buffer, no liquidity. The mortgage payment was $1,100 a month. That's $13,200 a year. The interest rate was 5.75%, low. Basically free money compared to what I could have done with the cash. If I kept the $170,000 in savings and kept paying the mortgage, here's what would have happened. When I lost my job, we would have had cushion, real cushion. Could have lived for years on that money if we needed to. Could have helped Sarah properly, given them money for rent instead of cramming them into our house. Could have avoided the stress, the credit card debt, the desperation. And that $170,000 invested conservatively in 2007 would have taken a hit in the crash but recovered, would probably be worth $300,000 plus today. Instead, I put it in the house and got nothing. No growth, no liquidity, no flexibility. Just the psychological satisfaction of being debt-free. That's what I paid $170,000 for. The feeling of being debt-free, while almost losing everything. I'm 74 years old now, retired, living on Social Security and a small pension from the warehouse job. Barbara's retired too. We're okay, not great, but okay. And I still live in that house, the house I paid off in 2007. It's worth about $450,000 now, and it's illiquid. Can't spend it, can't use it, just sits there. Equity I can't access without selling and moving. If I could go back, I'd keep the mortgage. I'd invest that $170,000. I'd keep liquid, keep flexible, keep options open. Because here's what I learned the hard way. Debt isn't always bad. Sometimes debt is a tool. Sometimes having a low interest mortgage and keeping cash liquid is smarter than being debt free. Dave Ramsey says, pay off everything. Be debt free at all costs. And for some people, maybe that works. But for us, it almost destroyed us. Because when the emergency came, and emergencies always come, we had no cash. Had a paid off house we couldn't eat, couldn't sell, couldn't leverage, and we nearly lost everything anyway. I fumbled the bag, not by buying bad investments, not by getting scammed, but by making what I thought was the responsible choice, the smart choice, the debt-free choice, and it was the wrong choice, completely wrong. My son-in-law asked me for financial advice a few years ago. He and Sarah had saved up enough to pay off their mortgage, wanted to know if they should do it. I told him no. Keep the mortgage, keep the cash. You never know when you'll need liquidity, when life will throw you a curveball, when you'll need options. He looked surprised, said, "But Dad, you paid off your mortgage. You always said it was the best thing you ever did." And I said, I lied. It was one of the worst things I ever did. Don't make my mistake. Cash would have saved me. Liquidity would have saved me. Having options would have saved me. But I gave all that up to be debt-free. And I paid for it. We paid for it. For years. I'm 74 years old. I paid off my mortgage early and regretted it. Not because debt-free is bad in theory, but because in practice, in real life, when the emergency comes, you need cash more than you need a paid-off house. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening to an old man who learned an expensive lesson about liquidity the hard way.